Deals are happening right now in this market, and sometimes the deal is kind of hidden from the general public. So I want to explain what's really going on. Of course, we all know that one way buyers get deals is by offering a lower purchase price when they make an offer. However, in this market, seller concessions are very common. So I want to explain exactly what that means. Basically, the seller gives the buyer a credit at the closing table that the buyer can use towards closing costs or prepaid, like taxes, insurance, or a rate buy down. Now, closing costs are usually between 6 and 8,000, depending on the loan amount. But when you buy down the interest rate, it can help you. And by the way, this helps sellers too. And it's one of the things that I do to coach my clients and save them money. So let's start with the seller scenario and how it really helps them the most. So a seller who might be selling for $500,000, they might have to drop the price by an average of 6% in this market, which is $30,000. But instead, they could offer $15,000 in seller concessions. And that would result them a net of $485,000 instead of that 6% price drop of $30,000, making their net $470,000. So the savings to the seller is $15,000 to try to get under contract. Now, obviously, nobody wants to drop their price as a seller, right? But the gains you have from the past, years since COVID, when we had huge appreciation, in some ways are artificially inflated right now. And in order to actually sell a property, sellers have to make some version of concessions, whether it's dropping the price or offering these credits to the buyer. Now let's talk about, as a buyer, how it benefits you. Okay, again, let's go back to the $500,000 purchase price. Now there's plenty of assumptions in these numbers, and I've just used some like random round numbers. I'm also assuming 20% down and a 7% interest rate. However, I heard that they are closer to 6.5 right now. So that's great news. And if you want a mortgage calculator, I'll drop it in the comments below, because it's really good to start playing with what your payment might be and the effect on interest rates. So we'll talk more about that later. So going back to this $500,000 property, if you have a loan amount of $388,000, your monthly payment is about $2,580 a month without buying down the interest rate. But that's assuming that we have asked for the lower price of $485,000. So you're trying to get a deal in that way. But if you use if you use the concessions to pay for the closing costs, your payment will decrease, of course, but it's more like, your payment doesn't decrease in this case. You actually end up paying a little bit more on this. If you use the concessions to do a permanent rate buy down, and now let me explain the difference between a permanent and a 2-1 buy down. So a permanent rate buy down is where you pay points to buy the interest rate down over the entire life of the loan. And that would save you about $118 a month in this scenario. However, we're in what I hope to be a declining interest rate market, or so a couple of lenders have told me recently. And in that case, it might not actually make sense to buy down the interest rate permanently. So instead, what buyers are doing is they are asking for that seller concessions, and they are doing that column on the far right there on your screen. It's the peach columns. They're doing a 2-1 buy down. A 2-1 buy down works like this. In the first year, you buy down the interest rate by 2 full percent. And when I say you, I mean the seller is paying for that, okay, not the buyer. The second year, they buy down the interest rate 1%. So if we start at 7%, and then the first year, your interest rate's at 5%, the second year, it's at 6%. This strategy allows you to have lower payments for the first 2 years, but then you'll have the opportunity, hopefully, if interest rates start to decline, to refinance. And you can still secure a permanent rate buy down for the life of the loan from year 3 to year 30. So the way that I negotiate for my clients, especially when they're buyers, is I talk with the lender and say, hey, what's going to benefit these guys more? Is it better for you to buy down the interest rate permanently to help your debt to income ratios? Is it better for you to have closing costs paid for so that you have less in cash to close? Or is it better for you to use this 2-1 buy down strategy? So if you're curious more about either of these graphs or playing with a mortgage calculator, talking over how we can get you a deal in the market right now, let me know, because there are deals happening all over the place.